Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Gates channel. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and hit like for more daily drama updates and spoilers. Your support truly means a lot and helps our channel grow every day. Now, let's jump straight into today's exciting update. It began with an unsettling promise that no one saw coming, as a shadow from the past seemed ready to step into the light and expose a secret that could change everything. During the explosive week of July 20th through July 24th on Beyond the Gates, lives teetered on the edge of revelation, betrayal, heartbreak, and dangerous new beginnings. Dani Dupree suddenly found herself cornered by someone claiming to know the truth she has fought desperately to keep buried, forcing her to question whether her carefully hidden secret is finally about to surface or whether someone is simply playing a dangerous game. At the same time, Izaiah Hawthorne was about to be blindsided by a shocking move from within his own family, proving once again that the deepest emotional wounds often come from the people closest to us. As Heather Armstrong made her long-awaited return, Deanna McBride drifted even deeper into uncertain territory, and Grayson Perez's future appeared to grow darker by the day, every storyline weaving together into a week filled with suspense that refused to let anyone catch their breath. The drama erupted on Monday, July 20th, with Season 2, Episode 128, marking the final day of July sweeps, and every conversation seemed to carry enormous emotional weight. Tomas Navarro finally admitted his relationship frustrations to Grayson Perez, taking advice that Catherine "Cat" Richardson had practically forced upon him. Cat had insisted that Thomas needed real friends he could lean on instead of constantly turning to Eva Thomas Richardson every time his love life hit another obstacle, and perhaps she had been right all along. Grayson, despite carrying the burden of his troubled criminal past, appeared equally in need of someone who could understand life's complicated crossroads, making Thomas an unexpectedly perfect companion. Their growing friendship hinted that both men might finally discover the support they have each been missing, while also reminding viewers that redemption often begins with the simple act of opening up to another person. Meanwhile, Bill Hamilton wasted no time picking up the emotional confrontation that had begun days earlier with Dani Dupree. Still recovering after his recent hospital stay, Bill somehow made it from his law office to Dani's home with astonishing speed after Haley had called him complaining bitterly about her latest confrontation with Dani. The tension between the two women had revolved around Bill himself and the intimate history that neither of them seemed willing to leave behind. Once alone with Dani, Bill confidently reminded her that he had already proven his discretion by keeping their unforgettable elevator encounter completely secret, insisting that any future encounters would remain just as confidential. Dani, however, desperately tried to slam the door on temptation, firmly declaring that nothing between them would ever happen again, yet Bill's quiet confidence as he answered, "Never say never," carried the unmistakable feeling that this story was far from over, leaving viewers wondering whether Dani's determination would eventually crumble beneath emotions she could no longer control. Elsewhere, hope quietly blossomed in a storyline filled with warmth rather than conflict, as Ted Richardson and Shanice Johnson reached an important turning point in their growing romance. Only days earlier, Ted had finally admitted that he was falling deeply in love with Shanice, placing his heart completely in her hands after weeks of emotional hesitation. Now their conversation continued, and for the first time, Shanice seemed ready to lower the walls she had built around herself for so long. Encouraged by the thoughtful advice of her aunt, Monica McCormick, Shanice considered embracing the possibility of real happiness instead of allowing fear to dictate her future. Yet, even as this beautiful relationship appeared ready to flourish, a dark cloud lingered just beyond the horizon because Dana Leslie Thomas would undoubtedly be furious once she discovered that Ted's heart now truly belonged to another woman, setting the stage for another emotional collision that seemed impossible to avoid. Nicole Dupree Richardson also found herself drawn into conversations about love and commitment as she tried to understand her daughter Kat's complicated relationship with Thomas. Nicole had only recently learned from Vernon Dupree and Anita Dupree that Kat had secretly purchased a condominium with plans for Thomas to move in alongside her, despite the unforgettable disaster of his very public marriage proposal in front of the entire family. Moving in together almost felt like a compromise after that painful moment, but beneath the hopeful surface lingered unresolved insecurities that refused to disappear. Tomas continued struggling with the enormous financial gap between himself and Kat, quietly wrestling with the uncomfortable feeling that he might become little more than a kept man. As mother and daughter discussed these difficult realities, the emotional complexity of their conversation reminded everyone that even genuine love can be tested by pride, vulnerability, and the fear of losing one's own identity. By Tuesday, July 21st, the emotional focus shifted toward the Hawthorne family as Season 2, Episode 129, explored old wounds that had never truly healed. Ever since returning to the DMV, Izaiah Hawthorne had been forced to confront painful memories of always being viewed as the family's black sheep, while his brother Jacob Hawthorne was celebrated as the golden son. Throughout those difficult years, Joey Armstrong had remained one of the few people who consistently believed in Izaiah's ability to transform himself from a reckless troublemaker into a respectable, responsible adult. Recently, Izaiah had fiercely defended Eva whenever his mother, Darlene Hawthorne, criticized her, despite Darlene's understandable hatred toward Leslie. Now Darlene seemed genuinely determined to change, making a sincere effort to accept Ava regardless of Leslie's actions. But an even greater surprise awaited Izaiah when his father, Elon Hawthorne, suddenly reached out in an unexpected attempt to rebuild their broken relationship. Whether motivated by his own regrets or quietly encouraged by Darlene, Elon's heartfelt gesture promised to challenge years of bitterness and emotional distance, leaving Izaiah completely blindsided by a reconciliation he never expected to receive. As these family dynamics unfolded, Eva found herself receiving timely advice from Kyle, whose guidance could prove essential as she continued recovering from everything she had endured. Whether their meeting happened during one of her physical therapy appointments or through a chance encounter at the hospital, Kyle's words seemed destined to help Eva navigate the difficult road ahead. Across town, another family was struggling beneath the crushing weight of heartbreaking medical news. Vernon Dupree stood firmly beside a devastated Anita after learning that the BRCA gene mutation she carried had not only been passed down to Dani, but also to Naomi Hamilton Hawthorne. Anita had kept the devastating truth hidden while Jacob was working undercover, but now Naomi had finally revealed everything, forcing the entire family to confront a frightening new reality. As Naomi seriously considered preventive surgeries, including a double mastectomy and hysterectomy, to dramatically reduce her risk of developing cancer, Jacob lovingly reassured her that he had already accepted the possibility of never having children together, while Anita wrestled with overwhelming guilt and searched for the strength to offer Naomi the wisdom only someone who had walked that painful path could provide. At the same time, Vanessa McBride received another update from Nicole concerning the increasingly complicated state of her romantic life. Nicole continued dividing her attention between Carlton Fitzgerald and Kyle, leaving even those closest to her struggling to determine where her heart truly belonged. Her feelings seemed to shift almost daily, making every new conversation feel like another twist in an already confusing emotional journey. Yet Nicole also stumbled upon surprising information regarding Ted, raising fresh questions about whether his growing love story with Shanice was beginning to attract attention throughout the community. As whispers spread from one family to another, it became increasingly clear that no relationship in Fairmont Crest could remain private forever, no matter how desperately people wished to protect the fragile happiness they had finally found. Wednesday's events, unfolding in Season 2, Episode 130, carried an almost surreal atmosphere as Deanna McBride crossed paths with a handsome stranger who appeared to need her help. The mysterious encounter immediately sparked questions about whether Joey Armstrong had somehow orchestrated the meeting, considering his ongoing doubts about Vanessa's daughter and Randy Parker's constant surveillance of Deanna's every move. Yet Deanna herself remained trapped inside a reality that few others could truly understand. She continued openly speaking with and embracing the ghost of her late father, Doug McBride, carrying on emotional conversations in public as though he were physically standing beside her. Anyone witnessing those heartbreaking moments would naturally question her mental state, wondering whether grief had finally blurred the line between memory and reality, while viewers were left questioning whether something far more mysterious might actually be taking place. Elsewhere, Nicole and Shanice shared an honest conversation centered entirely around Ted, with both women choosing openness instead of secrecy. If Shanice admitted that she and Ted had exchanged declarations of love, Nicole would undoubtedly understand just how serious their relationship had become. At the same time, Naomi found herself genuinely surprised by Bill Hamilton's reaction after learning about her BRCA diagnosis, wondering whether his concern stemmed from fear of losing her or from guilt over everything their family had already endured. Dani, meanwhile, visited Vernon and Anita, only to have Anita gently ask whether there was something Dani wanted to tell them. For one agonizing moment, it seemed entirely possible that Dani might confess the truth about her dangerous involvement with Bill, yet whatever request she ultimately placed before her parents was firmly rejected by Anita. Across town, Haley Lawson's sinister ambitions became chillingly clear during her meeting with Randy Parker as she reminded him of the favor she had supposedly done involving Lynette Wise before making a horrifying promise that the next time Bill suffered one of his medical episodes, she intended to make sure his destination would be the coroner instead of another hospital, revealing just how dangerously far Haley might be willing to go. The tension only intensified on Thursday, July 23rd, as Season 2, Episode 131 unfolded, with several seemingly ordinary moments hiding enormous significance beneath the surface. Anita presented Laura Peterson with a meaningful gift that hinted at deeper emotional importance, while Vernon attempted to reason with Bill, encouraging him to stop ignoring the worsening health issues that continued threatening his future. Haley's disturbing conversation with Randy also continued, though this time she warned him to stay away from Mona Wilson, despite Mona's sincere efforts to draw Randy toward church and a better life. Elsewhere, June unexpectedly obtained information that could dramatically affect Naomi's future, perhaps by overhearing something during an ordinary outing, or even spotting Haley and Randy together during one of their secret meetings around Uptown. Bradley Smitty Smith also turned to Jacob Hawthorne for assistance with what appeared to be another ambitious investigative journalism project, while Andre Richardson became deeply concerned over a mysterious gift Dani received, raising immediate suspicions that Bill might once again be attempting to find his way back into Dani's life, despite every warning telling him to stay away. By Friday, July 24th, the emotional stakes reached extraordinary heights as Season 2, Episode 132, brought multiple storylines crashing together in dramatic fashion. Eva joined Chelsea Hamilton during a live stream promoting organ donation. honoring a cause that carried personal meaning while also exposing lingering tensions within her extended family. Kat had previously insisted she had no objection to Chelsea partnering with Ava, yet she now bitterly complained that Ava had somehow won over Ted, Thomas, and now even Chelsea herself, making it increasingly difficult for Kat to hide the jealousy quietly growing inside her. Chelsea seemed prepared to challenge Kat's accusations rather than simply accepting them, suggesting another emotionally charged confrontation could be waiting just around the corner. At the same time, Vanessa comforted a visibly shaken Dani, whose emotional turmoil may have stemmed either from Naomi's heartbreaking genetic diagnosis or from the impossible feelings she continued battling over Bill. Jacob also found himself disturbed by something Elon said, proving that repairing years of family damage would be far more complicated than anyone had imagined. The week's biggest shock arrived with the unexpected return of Heather Armstrong, stunning Joey when she revealed that she had come back to the DMV with one very specific mission: to tie up loose ends. Those simple words immediately cast an ominous shadow over Grayson Perez, whose dangerous past made him an obvious candidate for someone Heather might consider unfinished business. Meanwhile, another emotional bombshell threatened Dani's carefully guarded world when Nicole quietly told her that she already knew the truth. The statement instantly filled Dani with panic, as she feared Nicole had somehow discovered her secret involvement with Bill, though it remained entirely possible Nicole was referring to something completely different. Still, the possibility of confession suddenly hung heavily in the air, leaving viewers wondering whether Dani would finally reveal everything to her sister, despite knowing Nicole would almost certainly disapprove after everything Ted's infidelity had already put their family through. As if that weren't enough, Bill Hamilton's condition took another frightening turn before the week came to a close. Alone in his office, he became increasingly disoriented, struggling to think clearly as his body and mind betrayed him in ways he could no longer ignore. Confusion settled across his face as he desperately tried to understand what was happening, realizing that something was terribly wrong beyond simple exhaustion. The once confident attorney who believed he could control every situation suddenly found himself powerless against an invisible threat he couldn't explain. And as every family secret, dangerous alliance, unexpected reunion, and emotional confession continued moving toward an inevitable collision, one haunting question lingered over everyone in Fairmont Crest. When the truth finally comes into the light, who will survive the consequences and whose life will be changed forever? As one emotional storm faded into another, an even darker feeling settled over Fairmont Crest, where every smile seemed to conceal a secret and every conversation carried the possibility of changing someone's life forever. Dani Dupree could no longer escape the growing pressure surrounding her hidden relationship with Bill Hamilton, and every passing hour made it harder to keep the truth buried. The mysterious claim that someone knew her biggest secret continued to echo in her mind, leaving her unable to tell whether she was being manipulated or whether her carefully protected world was finally beginning to collapse. Every familiar face suddenly looked suspicious, every innocent question sounded like an accusation, and every unexpected encounter felt like another step toward exposure. The fear wasn't simply that people would discover what happened between her and Bill. It was the devastating realization that the revelation could permanently damage the trust of the people she loved most, especially Nicole, whose opinion mattered more to Dani than she was willing to admit. Nicole's quiet declaration that she already knew the truth became one of the week's most emotionally charged moments because it left Dani completely frozen. In that single instant, countless possibilities raced through Dani's mind as she desperately tried to determine how much Nicole actually knew. Had someone witnessed the stolen encounter with Bill? Had Bill confessed something during one of his increasingly confused moments? Or was Nicole speaking about something entirely different while Dani's own guilty conscience filled in the terrifying blanks? The uncertainty became almost unbearable because sometimes fear itself can be more destructive than the truth, forcing people to imagine the worst long before reality ever catches up with them. If Dani finally chose to confess everything, she would not only risk Nicole's disappointment, but also reopen old emotional wounds left behind by Ted's betrayal, creating another painful chapter in a family that had already endured more heartbreak than most could bear. At the center of that emotional hurricane stood Bill Hamilton himself, a man who was slowly losing control over both his personal life and his own health. Although he continued insisting that his connection with Dani could remain their private secret, his confidence was beginning to crack beneath the weight of frightening medical episodes that arrived without warning. The disorientation he experienced inside his office was no ordinary moment of exhaustion. For perhaps the first time, Bill genuinely appeared frightened by what was happening to him, unable to explain why his mind seemed to drift away from him when he needed it most. His growing confusion raised unsettling questions about whether an undiagnosed illness was quietly taking hold, or whether years of stress, guilt, and emotional turmoil had finally pushed him beyond his limits. Whatever the answer might be, Bill was beginning to realize that there were battles no amount of money, power, or legal brilliance could win. Yet while Bill struggled with his own invisible crisis, Haley Lawson appeared to be moving in the exact opposite direction, becoming colder and more calculating with every decision she made. Her chilling conversation with Randy Parker revealed a woman who no longer seemed interested in simply outmaneuvering her enemies. She wanted to eliminate them completely. The horrifying suggestion that Bill's next medical emergency should end with a coroner instead of another trip to the hospital exposed just how dangerous Haley's ambitions had become. Even more disturbing was the possibility that she may have already played a role in Lynette Wise's disappearance, turning what once sounded like rumors into something far more sinister. Haley continued wearing the mask of composure whenever it benefited her, but beneath that polished exterior, a far more ruthless figure was beginning to emerge, one willing to cross lines that others would never even consider approaching. Meanwhile, another emotional journey unfolded inside the Hawthorne family, where years of disappointment and resentment slowly gave way to the fragile possibility of healing. Elon Hawthorne's attempt to reconnect with Izaiah carried tremendous emotional significance because it acknowledged mistakes that had remained unspoken for far too long. Izaiah had spent much of his life believing he would forever stand in Jacob's shadow, convinced that no matter how much he changed, he would always be remembered as the family's disappointment. Now, with Darlene making a genuine effort to embrace Eva, despite everything Leslie had done, and Elon reaching out with what appeared to be sincere regret, the family finally had an opportunity to rebuild relationships that once seemed beyond repair. Even so, forgiveness is rarely immediate, and emotional scars do not disappear overnight. Every conversation between father and son carried years of buried pain beneath the surface, making even the smallest step toward reconciliation feel remarkably powerful. Eva's own journey reflected that same quiet determination to move forward despite unimaginable hardships. Still recovering physically and emotionally, she accepted Kyle's advice during a period when every encouraging word mattered. Whether they crossed paths during rehabilitation or through another hospital visit, Kyle's support reminded Ava that healing rarely happens alone. At the same time, she prepared to participate in Chelsea Hamilton's organ donation live stream, embracing an opportunity to inspire others through a cause larger than herself. Her willingness to use her own experiences to encourage hope demonstrated just how much she had grown through adversity. Yet even this positive moment couldn't escape family tensions as Kat continued struggling with the belief that Eva somehow kept winning over everyone important in her life, from Ted to Thomas and now Chelsea, feeding insecurities that threatened to overshadow Kat's own happiness. Kat's frustration highlighted an emotional truth that many people quietly experience but rarely admit. Watching someone else effortlessly earn admiration can sometimes awaken feelings of jealousy that have very little to do with the other person and everything to do with one's own hidden fears. Chelsea, however, appeared unwilling to let those accusations stand without challenge. Rather than allowing Kat's resentment to define the conversation, Chelsea seemed prepared to defend both her own decisions and Eva's character. That confrontation promised to become far more than a disagreement between friends. It represented two very different ways of viewing loyalty, family, and acceptance. While Kat believed Eva was steadily taking pieces of her life away, Chelsea appeared ready to remind her that love and respect are never limited resources. Elsewhere, Ted Richardson and Shanice Johnson continued writing one of the week's most uplifting chapters. Their relationship, built slowly through patience and vulnerability, now seemed ready to enter an entirely new stage as both embraced the possibility of lasting love. Shanice's decision to stop guarding her heart reflected remarkable emotional courage, especially after receiving Monica McCormick's heartfelt advice to allow herself the chance to be happy. Yet every joyful moment carried the knowledge that Leslie Thomas would almost certainly react with anger once she learned Ted had completely moved on. Leslie's inability to let go of the past threatened to become another obstacle standing between two people who had finally found genuine happiness together. Still, for the moment, Ted and Shanice chose hope over fear, proving that love often requires trusting tomorrow even when yesterday continues trying to pull you backward. The emotional burden surrounding Anita Dupree also continued to deepen as she struggled to accept the painful legacy of the BRCA gene mutation that had affected multiple generations of her family. Learning that both Dani and Naomi carried the mutation forced Anita to confront feelings of guilt that no mother ever wants to experience. She questioned whether there had been anything she could have done differently, even though deep down she understood that some burdens simply cannot be prevented. Naomi's willingness to consider life-changing preventive surgeries demonstrated extraordinary bravery, while Jacob's unconditional support offered a touching reminder that true love extends far beyond biological plans or future expectations. Together, they faced one of life's most difficult decisions with remarkable strength, reminding everyone around them that courage is often measured not by the absence of fear, but by the determination to keep moving forward despite it.